I would like to introduce the Honorable Nickolas Guertin. Mr. Guertin was sworn in as the Director Operational Tests and Evaluation in 2021. He is a presidential appointee confirmed by the United States Senate. He serves as the Senior Advisor to the Secretary of Defense on operational and live-fire test and evaluation of DoD weapon systems. He has an impressive 4-decade combined military and civilian career. So, Director Guertin, over to you, sir.
I was just thanking her for the delightfully brief introduction. Last year when I was here, I read the full bio, and I think I said something like, well, if you live long enough, you get to do a bunch of stuff. But anyway, thanks very much for, a full room. This is really, really impressive. I'm particularly happy to be a part of this, a part of continuous learning, a part of growing as a professional. This is one of the things that I treasure, actually, about the profession that we're in, is learning and growing and finding new things and collaborating with peers. You know, some of the best interactions come during the breaks. Make sure you take full advantage of those. So this is our 8th annual event that IDA and NASA have teamed up together on. For those of you not familiar with my office, let me give you just a brief overview. We were commissioned in, I think, 1983 by Congress as an independent oversight agent, independent reporting directly to the Secretary of Defense and to Congress, which is both part of the charm and part of what causes me not to get invited to a lot of parties. But in the little more than a year that I've been in this position, I have a renewed and better view of what DOT&E is, what it does, and the people in it. The old saying, wherever you stand depends sometimes upon where you sit, and from where I sit and what I see, the hardworking professionals of DOT&E and the operational test commands that support us, as well as IDA and others. It's an amazing group that does fantastic work. We're centered on operational representative conditions of systems that are going to be in the field for supporting warfighting. And we want to make sure we use the intended user, not cherry-picked people. We want to make sure we're using operational representative systems, not things that are just barely banded together just to run through a test. What it's going to be in the field when it gets used, both for operational test and the live fire test and evaluation that we're also responsible for. Suitable, survivable, effective, and where necessary, lethal. Tested to operational representative conditions adequately. That's the core of us. That's how we make sure we do test and evaluation that's going to be combat credible or operationally credible. I mean, we do things besides combat, like the new healthcare data management system. Not exactly a warfighting capability, but warfighters use it. So we want to make sure that's being done right. As an example. We also have been looking at the work that we do and the work we need to do. I'll get a little bit more into that in the future, but the idea is that when we report directly to Congress, we also say what's missing, what else do we need to have in order to do our jobs effectively, and they have been listening to us. Unbiased, unvarnished assessments of system performance in the mission system context means that sometimes we have to give bad news to good people. I mean, most programs are, the vast majority, with tiny exceptions, the people that work in program offices and the people that are in industry building those systems are trying to do their very best every single day. But once in a while, we have to give bad news to those good people. But we just call balls and strikes. We stay professional about it. It's nothing personal. It's strictly business. But we're in the business of new technologies. We're in the business of evaluating systems that are being fielded that are going to change the warfighting environment, either make our potential opponents uncomfortable by bringing new capabilities to the field or filling gaps in things that we need to be able to be responsive to. So that's the context of DOT&E. By the way, we're doing remote this time as well, right? So we got some people out there, so we'll make sure we acknowledge those in video land. So it's not only that we have a full room, but we have other people. By the way, what's the body count for number of people participating in DataWorks this year? Do we know? 350. That is amazing. All right. So, but we're going to need your help. We're going to need your innovation. We're going to need your ideas. You'll be hearing about some of those, but also be thinking about how you might participate, how you might contribute next year from the hard work that you do, the use cases you're in, the new test and evaluation methods you're experimenting with. Bring those ideas and think about how you might share them with others. That's the power of these kinds of conferences. So I mentioned that NASA and DOT&E have a partnership with an interagency agreement for doing things like this, supported by IDA and others. So I'm really encouraged that this is growing and improving over time. But let me switch a little bit to where we are in terms of we're evaluating capabilities that are improving over time. That's one of the things that I felt coming into this job. Fortunately, the rest of the team felt that as well. They had already positioned themselves to be receptive to applying new practices to the work of operational test and evaluation. The pump was primed. So one of the things that I did was I didn't come in guns blazing. I wanted to make sure I kind of observed and oriented what was going on. And what I saw happening under Dr. O'Toole's leadership and Bob Beeler before me was really a lot of work going in a good direction. But we needed to be coalesced into an updated strategy paper, which I worked with the team. They did most of the heavy lifting, and we were able to publish that in June. One of the things we were considering is not only is the products we test changing rapidly, but the tools we use to build those products are also changing. So how does that impact us? And how do we address things that are disruptive technologies like automation, artificial intelligence, processing being pushed out to the edge, the cybersecurity landscape continuously evolving, and how do we address all aspects of survivability, not just physical, but also virtual. So with all that in mind, we struck out on putting out an updated strategy paper. And centered on that was think and act like an enterprise and capability built to change over time. Those are enduring, and it was hard to find anybody to argue the point. So we're able to get that out. Then the next step was actually quite a bit more complicated, and that is getting people on board. Okay, we can write our own strategy paper, huzzah, but how do you build coalitions, get partnerships, get other people to participate with you in that transformation effort? That's the hard part. That's where you have to work on teamwork and collaboration and building partnerships and building new relationships. So, through the lens of an implementation plan, we've been successful in bringing to this T&E strategy update the partners of the service secretaries and my neighbors in the building of the Undersecretary for Research and Engineering and Acquisition and Sustainment. So we're all six of us are on board with this implementation plan. Actually, we've briefed portions of it to Congress and showed them some places where we're going to need some additional investment, and they've been responsive to that as well. So let's talk about the strategy itself. We predicated the activities of the implementation plan on 5 pillars. And the first one is test the way we fight. Like I said, operational representative with systems that are going to be like what's going to be in the field, with operators, not necessarily cherry picked, but people who are going to be the mainstream of what it's going to take to operate these systems in the field. We also want to think about our systems as working in a multi-domain environment. We fight as a joint force. Our systems operate in the context of a system of systems, and how do we make sure we understand those complexities as we do this test work? Then the next is to accelerate the delivery of weapons that work. The moniker for DOT&E has always been the key to weapons that work, but these weapons are changing quickly, and we want to be a part of the delivery of accelerated capability. Doesn't do us a lot of good for operational test community to be left behind, right? I had a conversation about that with one of the senators up on the Hill, where it's like, wait, well, maybe we don't want you to be fast. Maybe we want you to be independent and careful. I said, look, if we're not a part of the fast-moving train, we'll be left behind, and the warfighter will suffer. So we're all about being a part of accelerating delivery of weapons that work. Data is a big part of that. Now, we at DOT&E, we don't actually build product, right? We're not the warfighting capability producers. We're the independent evaluators. But in the context of what we can do to accelerate that delivery, we need to have a better understanding of how we manage our data and how we share it in the ways that can be shared, and how do we access it and look at it in different ways to bring different views of how that information can be valuable to us, to establish the tools, the processes that optimize integrated test and evaluation. Having a conversation recently with a think tank about, hey, what's the different roles of the test and evaluation community? We have, the classic approach of the big systems engineering V design of, contractor test, development test, operational test, sustainability. But a lot of our systems are built on like an agile framework or DevOps or something like that, where the timeline between product need and product delivery is collapsed, so that the idea of like these tests being separate doesn't really hold up to the demand signal of delivering that capability. So integrated test is something we've talked about at DOT&E for a long time, but now we need to think about how do we participate in accelerating delivery of weapons at work and be a part of like a DevOps lifecycle. It's a big challenge for us, but we're stepping into it. The third pillar is improving survivability in a contested environment. Certainly, we've always done and have a big equity in live fire testing, the physical side of survivability. But we also need to step boldly into the cyber survivability aspect of the contested environment. And we've been doing some really good work in that area, and we're making a lot of progress. The fourth pillar is pioneer T&E of weapon systems built to change over time. That's a recurring theme, but what about the tools? What about the methods? How do we interact with the development community? How do we interact with the user community in a way that better takes advantage of the evolving practice of building systems and testing them? Standardize and increase the use of credible digital tools, digital twins, new methods of doing product development and test and evaluation. I'm particularly interested in test automation. I think that's an area we have a lot of growth opportunities in, where we could be stepping into how do we do test automation for weapon systems built to change over time, because the testing landscape is going to grow, but the number of people we have doing test and evaluation is not going to grow as fast as that landscape is going to grow. We're going to have to use technology to fill the gap in between those two demand signals. Fourth pillar is foster an agile, enduring T&E enterprise workforce. Now, workforce, right? One of the reasons why we're here. How do we grow and improve the test and evaluation workforce? Highly skilled, prepared to meet the toughest challenges, continuous learning, and understanding how we change the workforce operation model? How do we value talent and bring in the right people and train the people we have, right? We're not getting rid of anybody. We need the people we have, but we need them to also grow and improve over time. DataWorks is one of several venues we have for improving that practice, especially on the data side of it. Very excited about that. The short courses you attended yesterday and the talks, case studies, posters, mini tutorials that you'll be hearing about the next couple of days are all part of that value of developing your skills that we need to succeed in this very fast-paced world that we live in. Not just learn as much as you can, but think about how you can be a part of that community of growing knowledge in the future. The collaboration with academic communities, I came from, my last job was working for a university. I don't consider myself an academic as much as a kind of a practicing researcher. And to that end, having published as a part of my regular work, I sought out an opportunity to do that in this current role. Last month, Dr. Allison Goodman and I co-wrote an article and published it in the ITEA March Journal. So please check that out. I think there's a link in the on the webpage for this conference. I think it came out okay. You let me know. Later on today, I think Dr. Werner is going to be giving some more depth on a talk about our strategy initiative and our implementation plan. So please attend that if you're curious, and don't be shy about providing us some feedback about things we should be looking into going forward.